As regards my questions to you, you will see that I have written another document to house these questions, and that at the start of this document, I make very clear how inspired I was by your appointment as CEO of the London Stock Exchange, because, come on, there's something truly remarkable about seeing someone break barriers and bring fresh energy into such a significant role. And as a diverse woman myself with a diverse sister too, your success felt particularly meaningful to me. And your rise in the financial world against all odds was certainly something I could get behind. However, after 4 years of high expectations and optimism, it has been hard to ignore the challenges that the London Stock Exchange is facing. Liquidity continues to be a problem for UK equities. There has been an alarming number of delistings, and certainly the IPO drought has been of great concern to many. The rate of delistings to IPOs is 5 to 1. In the States, it's 1.8 to 1, and in Europe, 2.8 to 1. So we have quite a lot of work, in my opinion, to do to turn these numbers around. At the same time, I can't help notice that despite these struggles, the London Stock Exchange appears to continue to regularly congratulate itself, which seems quite tone deaf given how concerned the markets are about our performance and our future. Now, there's nothing wrong with being optimistic and being positive. Heck, I'm that way. But I think it's also really important to make sure that the messaging is balanced and also reassuring to the people, to the market, that you see what is going on and that your views are balanced and not just blindly optimistic to a point where people feel gaslighted. I don't like using words like that, but I have heard it a number of times, and frankly, I have felt that way too. So I have to ask, how does accountability work at the London Stock Exchange? Does it exist internally? And is the decline of the exchange just a result of external pressures, or are there things the London Stock Exchange could do better? Now, I believe these questions are fair because anyone in a situation similar to you would face similar line of questioning. So I've been living in the UK for over 20 years, despite my accent, and I've seen how investor scrutiny has shaped corporate governance. So I find it interesting and troubling at the same time that the leadership at the London Stock Exchange doesn't seem to have been questioned more, especially when IPOs are drying up and companies are leaving the market. So that's why I'm speaking up. I don't share the view that we should just sit back and accept things as they are. If we care about the future of UK markets and the capital that flows through them, we need to ask tough questions and we need to challenge the status quo and demand better leadership. I think of all people, you would understand this greatly. So as an investor who holds shares in over 1,400 UK listed companies, I've spent years engaging with boards, executives, and stakeholders across our capital markets. I've attended AGMs, I've hosted forums, and I've connected with everyone from Gen Z influencers to FTSE board chairs. And I'm also doing a PhD on this whole subject matter. Now I'm bringing all of that experience, insight, and passion to help rebuild pride, trust, and a sense of community in the London Stock Exchange. And I believe it all starts with asking the right questions. So, in terms of my questions, I have split these into 5 core themes. So, I'm focusing on governance, effectiveness, fairness, inclusion and representation, and collaboration and action. And I don't expect all of this to be tackled in one go. My hope is to have continuous engagement with you, and that you can have continuous engagement with other market participants like myself and the groups I represent. In terms of governance, really what I'd love to understand is who's accountable at the London Stock Exchange? What is the internal governance structure? Because I'm obviously very clear at how governance works at listed companies. So I understand the governance structure within the London Stock Exchange Group, LSEG, with regards to the board, company secretariat, investor relations. But it's less clear when it comes to the LSC, which essentially is a subsidiary of LSEG. So how does the governance framework operate and look at the London Stock Exchange itself? What exactly is your mandate? Because I have made assumption based on public information, including statements you've made in the past. But in order to track and measure progress, it would be really great to get clarity on what is the mandate that you have been brought in to do, and who reviews performance. I think it's only fair to ask and ensure that our leaders are well supported. And if you look at the board structure, you've got the chair and you've got the CEO. The relationship between the chair and the CEO is incredibly important for the success of the business, in my opinion. And so I guess I'm asking, what is the structure for your leader, provides oversight and support to you? As regards the financials of the London Stock Exchange itself, I have struggled to find detailed information on this in the LSEG annual report, and it would be great if I could be enlightened about this. So would love to understand better the financial performance of the exchange itself, its budgets, and its expenditure on things like sponsorship, investments, on platform and business partnerships, and the split between AIM and main markets. So perhaps I've missed this information, but I would love clarity on the financial performance of the London Stock Exchange itself. And then in terms of effectiveness, this is really what people like me are intending to get to the bottom of and to help out with. Is the London Stock Exchange doing its job? Is it being as effective as it can be? Because we all want our capital markets to scintillate once again, right? I want our UK PLCs to kick ass, and I want next generation investors investing in UK PLCs. And certainly I'd love to see institutions come back and invest in our UK PLCs. So what is being done to revive our IPO market? I was at the Augmentum Fintech Capital Markets Day, and you were there, as well as the co-CEO of RetailBook, and both you and him were very optimistic about IPOs next year. Now, you mentioned that it's mostly the accountants and the lawyers who have visibility on the pipeline rather than the investment bankers, and that the media needs to improve its messaging because you feel media messaging to be negative and not representative of the facts that you know. The co-CEO of RetailBook forecasted 50 IPOs for next year. Now, that would be so amazing if it does happen. However, I find it hard to believe at this juncture for two reasons. Number one, IPOs for H1, I believe, was at 9. There was the recent IPO of Metlin last week, which was amazing. So many congratulations to Metlin and to you. But I want to understand better that forecast because the numbers don't seem to match. The information I have found online and through conversations don't seem to match either. And the second reason for the slight skepticism is, yeah, for the last 3 or 4 years, we have had a lot of optimism and a lot of these very rosy forecasts. And I guess I'm at that stage now where I have to be more skeptical. So it is a shame that, unlike in Hong Kong, where it is publicly disclosed what the pipeline of IPOs is, we don't have that in the UK. So is there greater clarity that we could obtain from you and your team? And this relates very much to how UK entrepreneurs are being supported. Now, remember, please, I'm also an entrepreneur. I founded a company that I sold to a FTSE 250 in 2018, and I exited that business 3 years ago. And I'm also an advisor to companies, particularly one that I'm very excited about, which is an M&A publications platform to hedge funds, which is now 10 years old and whose exit is expected to be an IPO in a couple of years and hopefully in London. And I have also been entrepreneur in residence at Cambridge University and continue to be a visiting entrepreneur. And of course, I remain very active in the entrepreneur circle. So I hear very regularly from fellow entrepreneurs, board directors, and investors about their view of London. And let me tell you, it hasn't been great. So pretty much every entrepreneur and advisor to these entrepreneurs and investors I've spoken to have said, don't list in London. You're not going to get the valuation you want. There's no liquidity, or there's little liquidity. Better to go to the US. So that's really disheartening. And then to read about Revolute, to read about Wise, but just like rewinding back to Revolute, to read about Revolute, which basically everyone is so excited about. And I am a Revolute customer. I think it's fantastic. But for 2 years, their struggle to get bank licensing and other issues they face has been really concerning. Now, the chancellor, bless her, gets a lot of flack, gets a lot of blame for what's happening with our capital market, including last week or the week before in relation to her wanting to have a meeting and the governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, basically blocking the meeting. So you have a head of fintech, Neil Shaw, and I assume a team around Neil. What has that team been doing to help out our unicorns and our largest other fintechs that basically have valuation of 500 million and above to basically stay here. Because looking at the Revolute situation, that doesn't seem encouraging because it has been 2 years already and we're still in a deadlock. So there has also been a LinkedIn post, which is great because people are now starting to talk about helping out much more. So essentially taking charge and doing what we can to turn around our capital markets. And so one fund manager has provided a list of all the UK unicorns today, led by Revolute, plus the 500 million plus companies. And the intention really is to galvanize all of us into helping out these companies stay in the UK. Now, how to do that? Well, I guess the first step would be to understand better what your team has been doing in regards to engaging these companies, and then do a gap analysis. And between all of us, including maybe the entrepreneurship labs that exist across the country, including in Cambridge, to basically do our parts in engaging with these entrepreneurs, supporting them, and maybe also doing the necessary to engage with regulators and various other participants who would be party to the decision that these entrepreneurs ultimately make about staying and listing in the UK. And then fairness, this is really very important to me and to many people, including yourself, I am sure. There have been some situations which have led me to question fairness, and it would be good to clarify this with you. And I will provide the case studies shortly, but generally, I want to understand what is the process for partnerships with the London Stock Exchange, so with the London Stock Exchange itself, and funding and investment. Is there transparency around potential conflicts of interest? And, what is the declaration process for that? And then with regards to inclusion and representation, a lot of this relates to capital markets industry task force, to be honest, but who gets a voice? So my understanding of the capital markets industry task force is that it's to represent capital markets, and capital markets encompass many different stakeholders, including retail shareholders, and they don't appear to be represented presently within the membership of CMIT. And as regards ethnic diversity, there is none presently on the CMIT membership. Everyone is white, contrary to the Parker Review, which states at least one ethnic minority on the board to be best practice. Now, I know your membership is not a board, but optics are very important. And I think it is also very important to set examples for the companies who list on your exchange. I just really want to understand that logic because I just really can't get my head around it, because you're a diverse woman and you have been celebrated so much for the inspiration that you have brought to the LGBT and to other communities, that this seems like a very strange miss. So I would really, really appreciate it if you can clarify this to me. I have asked Lisa Gordon about this, who was kind enough to meet with me earlier in the year. And I've also asked, just in passing, but also via email to Sir Nicholas Lyons. And then finally, in terms of collaboration and action, I think there is so much that can be done to create this sense of community. And I know it sounds emotional, but yes, an emotional connection between the public and the London Stock Exchange. So I hope you don't mind. I have proposed this idea of LSC Cafe, which has been inspired by the Santander Work Cafe, where basically there would be a place where people from the general public, where the general public would be welcomed to take part in the London Stock Exchange, even if it's just entering to get a coffee and learning a little bit more about what's going on within the exchange itself, and participating, importantly, in UK equities education programs that could be provided for free to interested members of the public. And when we say interested members of the public, they would include as well the millions of employees of our UK PLCs, right? And even directors of these companies are members of the public too. But essentially have the ability for the general public to learn more about UK equities and UK equities investing and basically the benefits as well as the risks in investing in our UK PLCs. And, these programs can be taught by the many different organizations, individuals within companies and influencers. It's a community. So I think the London Stock Exchange, because of its history, its meaning, and its visibility, really has the power to be able to inspire. And perhaps this little nudge in something as simple as LSC Cafe could be it. So I will pause here and continue with the case studies to be able to pose the questions around that.